Stay tuned for another episode of the Coming Soon podcast with Spider.
Hello, everybody. Once again, Spider here, Coming Soon podcast, San Antonio, Texas, with my guest from up north, the Ernst Harth. My man, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no, likewise, bro. And I appreciate your time. I mean, as always, man, for you guys jumping on here. And of course, I mean, you're up north, man, but you're actually in Canada, man. So how's the weather out there? Let me ask you that first.
Right now, it's it's so hard for me to say. It's nice, hot, and sunny, but at the same time, it's in Celsius, so I wouldn't even know it's 26 degrees Celsius. I don't even know what that translates to. It's a whole other world up here.
I know it's cold because I mean, up here right now it's like 97, man. We're boiling. So I'll just curious. I was gonna say, send some of that cold weather down here, man.
Yeah, no, the pool's open outside. It's not as cool as what. Hey, honey, what's 26?
It's about like 78.
It's about 78, she said.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say I think it's like times 3. I mean, that's the only way I remember that because school they always try to teach us otherwise, but it's just like but it's better than what we have right now. I'm telling you that. But yeah, I mean, of course, man. I mean, you're jumping on here. I appreciate you. I got questions, bro. I mean, right off the bat, as far as growing up, I mean, I'd read somewhere where as a kid you were put into place because. And I don't know if I read this correctly, but because of your size, I mean, you were a big kid. You're a big kid.
Right back to the very first thing I ever did. I didn't know when I started this new school, this new kindergarten to grade 5 school. I was in kindergarten. I didn't know that they had a tradition, and that was every year they'd have a Christmas pageant. And as a tradition, they would have the largest kid in the school play Santa Claus, which, is fine when the largest kid in the school is in grade 4 or 5. But when the largest kid in the school is in kindergarten, it throws it off a little. But it was fun for me because I was in kindergarten and I was in a play with a bunch of grade 4 and grade 5 years old, and they were looking up to me like I was the boss. Considering I was Santa Claus, I pretty much was the boss. But that got me interested right then and there. It was like, I've always been the kid who was seeking attention, wanting people to look at me, and doing silly things and making silly voices. And all of a sudden, it was like, hey, here's somewhere where I'm expected to do that, and that's where the bug bit me. Was right back down to kindergarten. But yeah, I was. When you see pictures of, I did a play, I think it was in grade 1 or 2. It was the Little Red Riding Hood, and I played the hunter. And when you see the pictures, I'm at least a foot, if not a foot and a half taller than everybody else on the stage with me. So yeah, when I went into grade 6, I was 6'3", 286.
Wow. Okay, now I was going to ask you that.
And so, yeah, the only time I wasn't big is when I was born. I was 7 pounds, 15 ounces.
Really?
Yeah. And then the second I hit oxygen.
Oh, that was it. Man.
I've never looked back, except thankfully, I lost more than 200 pounds, but that was much later on in life. We haven't got there yet.
No. Yeah, and actually, I have questions on that as well, man. We'll definitely be getting there. And let me ask you, because of course, because of your height, you were a big kid. I mean, that's the reason you got. I told the story on my end I was doing an interview the other day, a while back, and I was telling them, I said, because in school, I mean, here in San Antonio, I am, Mexican American, I'm Hispanic. So for me, like my name Mario. All the other kids had Fernandino. They had all these names that the teachers couldn't pronounce. Mm-hmm. So because my name was Mario, so simple. They were like, hey, you know what? We'll put Mario up front, and then so I was like the leading role for like I don't know how many plays in elementary school, and I mean I was embarrassed as hell, but it was just like but to top it off, they changed the songs for like the plays that they put like instead of Old McDonald's, they did Old McMario. And so forth, and it was just, I mean, to put more salt on the insult, right? I mean, it was one of those things that I kind of like, man, like I didn't pursue anything after that, man. That's why I was curious on your end, like if that's when it bit you, and you were like, yeah, you know what, I want to do this.
Yeah, but, because being the biggest kid in the school, people are already looking at me anyways. So I might as well give them a reason to look at me and laugh at me. Why laugh at me when you can laugh with me?
There you
And
go.
it's easier to take the bullies when you're making them look silly. But at the same time, it's not to say that I didn't have bullies, and you can be the biggest kid in the school and still have kids pick on you. That bullies are never the biggest kid in the school.
No, no.
They're the ones with the biggest chip on their shoulder. But
Well, yeah, you see, and that's what I was gonna say too, because in elementary school ourselves, man, there was a big kid that the same thing, man. He was just a big kid that stood out, and a lot of it, like I personally never made fun of the kid, but I know like my schoolmates, and a lot of it, I think it's insecurity. People just like they don't like themselves, or there's something about themselves they don't like as kids, and of course they're. But yeah, it did happen, and that guy was big, man. I mean, he was just, I mean, he couldn't help it, right? I mean, he was just a big kid. I mean, he was like bigger
listen,
than
I think a lot of time also, I think bullies are usually getting bullied at home,
yeah,
usually
yeah,
their parent or an uncle or somebody in the family. So they're just taking out what they're getting, because they
exactly.
can't take it out on that person. So they'll take it out on someone smaller or
Oh,
bigger, and that went on all the way up into now, even, if I get on the bus or the subway, and there's a bunch of people, especially if they've been drinking or they're just
oh yeah,
being stupid. There's always the one who wants to be the tough guy, and he's like going to show his buddies, well, watch this, I gotta do something to the big guy, because they got to challenge the biggest guy around
yeah,
to prove how strong they are. I get that when I used to go to bars and stuff. I used to get that people want to start fights with me because,
yeah.
and I might be the biggest guy, but when I worked in nightclubs as a doorman, I would be like the 20. If there were 25 doormen working, I'd be like the 25th guy to get into a fight, because I'm not a fighter. That whole I'm a lover, not a fighter. That was always me. I just happened to be a big guy. So when I was a kid, if people wanted to fight me, I would usually just fall to the floor and put my hands over my head and like a turtle and just lay there. And it's like, you do what you want. I'm not, because they're never going to believe the big guy. If there's a fight between a small guy and a big guy, the authority is always going to think it was the big guy who started it.
That's
Yeah.
true, man. I mean, and that's society. It's like, oh, okay, he's the biggest guy, so he's got to be the one doing all the harm, right? But man, I mean, of course, so it started as a kid, when it came to acting. When did you start, I guess, pursuing it professionally?
When I was 19, I was living back east in Ontario, Canada, and I had finished school, and I was working in nightclubs as a doorman, because when you're my size, that's a job you can always get. You just walk up to the club and go, I'm looking for a job, and you don't even need a resume. Your body's your resume. So I was 19. Because here the drinking age is 19, so I was already working in bars, and I was sitting in a coffee shop with my buddy one day, and he says, "What do you want to do? It's pretty boring around here." And he said, "Well, why don't we jump on a bus and go to Vancouver, which is on the other side of Canada," which was like a 4.5 day bus trip.
Oh
And
man,
I didn't have anything else going on, so I said, "Sure, why not?" We jumped on the bus. 4.5 days later, we got here and started working at a club again as a doorman and a bouncer. And while I was working at the one club, these two women approached me, and they said, "Are you in the film industry?" I said, "What? No, I'm a doorman here." Ah, well, you know what? You got a face that I think we could do something with.
oh
Why
okay,
don't you give me a call, and we'll set something up? And I thought to myself, bunch of chicks just trying to pick me up, whatever. And I put the card in my pocket, never thought about it. Got home, threw the card on my desk. A couple weeks later, I'm cleaning up my desktop, and I come across their card. It looks like they were both talent agents. So I thought, well, it must be legitimate. So I called them and set up a meeting. And within a week, I was shooting my first TV commercial. And that was in 1990. I shot my first commercial and did it part-time here and there, got some small little TV roles, got some commercials. And then in 1996, a friend now, but someone I didn't know then, he had seen me in a short film that I did for no money on the weekend kind of thing,
Right.
like you're always helping out your buddies kind of thing. And he had seen this, and unbeknownst to me, the role that I played in that little short film inspired him, that when he was writing his feature script, he saw this, that his friend showed him. My character in that little short film made him basically write one of the lead roles in his feature for me, someone he'd never met.
Wow.
He just saw me in this little short film, this little nothing thing. And so I get a phone call from my buddy, and he says, "Hi, I got a friend of mine. He wrote a film for you, and he'd like to meet with you. He's hoping you could star in his film." And I thought, well, that's bizarre. That doesn't happen. When does that happen to some nobody? So I met the guy, and it turned out that I was going to be a lead in his feature, but he was going to need me for 9 shooting days, a week and a half. And there was no way I was going to get 9 days off of my job that I had, my day job. So that was when I had to make the decision and lift it up to the universe and say, okay, if you want me to be an actor, this is where it's going to happen, because I can't have this job and do the acting. So I quit my job that was paying me money and went to do this film. And I've never looked back. I've been a full-time actor ever since. And that film, it took us from 96 to 2017 to get it finished.
Wow.
Because we shot it in 16 millimeter black and white, which is how you did films back then.
Right.
And then it got to the point where it was becoming too expensive to complete this film the way he envisioned it. The effects and the technology, it just didn't exist yet. So, and plus we were going to have to blow it up to 35 millimeter, and we were looking at $50,000 more that we needed. So we just basically put the film on the shelf and said, we'll come back to it. And he, about 14 years later, he's watching a special about the digital era and how things have switched over to digital now, and how you can just upload your footage into the computer and you can start doing everything on the computer. And so we took our film, sent the negative or the positive or whatever the name is for it, I can't remember, to a studio in LA, and they scanned the computer, 2K ProRes scan or whatever it's called, into the computer. Now we had the complete film. First of all, it was cleaner and nicer looking than we never seen it, because it was the actual negative. And so then he added animation, he changed the storyline, added all the special effects and stuff that we could never have afforded to do. And we finished the film, got it out to festivals. We won a bunch of things, the animated, best animated film and what have you. But as independent films go, we're still looking to get it distributed, still looking to get it out there on Tubi or somewhere.
Wow.
But yeah, if it wasn't for that film, I may not be sitting here. It was that film that I needed, that kick in the ass to take this seriously. And
no, and I was gonna say, I mean, in the beginning, because of course, I mean, you were like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna do this, and then it stalls. But I mean, of course, your career didn't stall, because you were still getting commercials and videos, right?
Yeah, in total, I think I did 35 commercials over the years, and it's funny, most of the commercials, you don't realize that they're non-union, because then when I joined the union and became a professional union actor, all of a sudden since then I've done 2 commercials. So
Wow.
It's funny, you get these big $1 million corporations, General Motors and all these big union companies, and then they got all these non-union commercials on the air. It's like, that's what happens. You go to an ad agency, you go, here's $2 million, make me a commercial. And the first thing the ad agency does is say, okay, we're going to pocket $1 million. We're not going to spend that. And now we'll go make the commercial on the cheap. We won't tell them. And then we get to keep all the extra money. And as long as there's actors willing to work for anything, and when you're starting off in this business, you take what you get. And lots of times that's free. Free stuff. But like I said, I did a little short film on the weekend for a buddy, and that was the thing that somebody that I didn't even know saw. And next thing you know, I'm in the lead in a feature, and my career took off from there. So that's my advice to anybody is, if you really want to act, just don't say no. Just, when you're in a position to do something, do it, because, eventually, you know, people will stop asking. So
Yeah, that's true, man. And I will say that because even now, I mean, it took me years to finally say, okay, you know what, this is like, I'm not gonna say no to opportunities, So I've gotten quite a bit. I've jumped on a lot of perks. I mean, just to kind of get my name out there and mostly my voice. I've been doing a lot
yeah.
of voice acting. But you're right though, man. I mean, it had to be scary though. I mean, to be able to say, you know what, I'm getting guaranteed money here, but I'm gonna risk it all for this. Who was it as far as home, like family that was supporting you, man? So
Well,
yeah, let's do it.
not really. I mean, the big reason why I moved out to Vancouver was to get away from my family. I was already as a teenager, I was already living on my own. I was on student welfare. I'd been kicked out, a fight with my dad and all that stuff. So there was really never any of the support. The biggest supporter that I had in my life was my grandmother, and she died in 1989 before any of this ever happened. So she was my support to be the creative one, to as a kid, to goof around and have fun and let your imagination go wild and all that stuff. And so that I had the support early on when I needed it. When I was a big kid in school and getting picked on and everything, I always had a shoulder I could cry, and I always had someone who supported me, and that was my grandmother. And then I moved out here, and then honestly, it was just my own self, my own, I'm going to show, it's amazing what spite and, whatever you want to call it, revenge or whatever. But when you have rough relations with family members, it's amazing what you can get done when you say, I'll show them.
Yeah.
Oh, you think I'm a nothing? I'll show you. I'll become something. And then you watch. Then you'll be calling me. Then you'll be coming after me. Then you'll be wanting stuff from me.
Okay, like I know that guy, But yeah, I mean, you're right. Let me ask you this, though, because I mean, from when it comes to artists, I mean, whether it's a painter, a singer, an actor, a lot of times, I mean, and I'm not saying like all the time, but I mean, a lot of those emotions, a lot of the, how can I say it, man? The expressions, come from pain. They come from suffering. They come from something. And I've noticed even in pain, like when it comes to artists, like painters, I mean, it's just they paint their feelings, or they sing their feelings, or they act them out, and it's just like wow, and then it's a strong emotion, man. But I mean, the fact that you were able to transcend and turn that into an acting career, man, that's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's the more of an interesting life you've had, the more stuff you have to rely on, the more stuff you have in your bag of tools.
Yeah.
It's like when someone says, we need you to play this down and out guy who's got nothing going for him. Okay, I've been there. I know how to do that.
Done.
I need this guy who works he's a bodyguard for a drug dealer. Oh, okay, yeah, I've been there. I know how to do that. Okay, it's
true,
not
man.
all, it's not all happy roses and bumblebees, and it's sometimes you just got to let and at the same time sometimes you just got to use your imagination. Some things you didn't go through, some things you didn't experience, so you just got to pretend. You got to go back to being that kid in the playground, the kid in the sandbox who's pretending to be whatever he wants.
No,
as we get older, we tend to turn off our imagination. We tend to turn off that.
And now I was thinking about that just today. I mean, actually, I took the family. I've been calling it an amusement park, right? It was like this pottery land, like it was out in the open, and I saw so many, like the scenery, I mean, it's just like broken rock, man. I mean, I was looking at everything, and I was like, man, I'd be having a blast playing out there, And I was just thinking, I mean, it's been a while since I've done that, but you're right. We tend to kind of stop being kids because of that. Our imagination kind of just fades away. But I mean, I'm still that guy.
I think also, I mean, let's admit it, the internet, social media, having a phone in our hands, all that has turned off a lot of the imagination, because especially when I was a kid, you had to entertain yourself.
Yeah.
You didn't have a phone or a computer to rely on. It was like in the summertime, it was like, okay, come back when the lights are on. What do I do until then? You figure it out. You go make it up, live in an imagination, play cops and robbers or whatever, nowadays.
I mean, back when, I mean, I always tell people one of the things, I mean, we didn't grow up poor. I mean, there was 10 of us growing up, but my dad was, he provided everything, but we were fortunate enough to get a lot of hand-me-downs when they came to games. But I mean, for the most part, man, I mean, we used to play with marbles, in the
Yeah.
backyard. We used to play
Yeah,
with
yeah.
rocks, and I mean, so when it came to imagination, it's like, man, we had everything we needed, especially in our own mind. We just get lost out there. But
Like
yeah, man.
I remember my mom, she told me when she was a girl in the 50s, they lived on a farm in northern Quebec, and they didn't have much. And I said to her, "What was the first toy you remember?" And she says it was a doll. And I said, "What kind of doll?" She said it was a rag that was turned, that one end of the rag had a knot in it.
Yeah,
So it
for
was
the
like
head.
the head. That was her doll.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
there's your imagination right there.
no, yeah, man. I mean, I know. Growing up, my older brother, his friend, he used to come over, and man, every time he came over, he used to make like some crazy like toys. Like one day we had an empty box, and he went and he cut it. And he made the windows and he cut the steps, and we're watching them, and I'm thinking like, damn, this kid. Like, I mean, we're fascinated because we're like, man, we got something to play with, but. I always wonder what happened to that guy because I mean his imagination, the fact that he was able to, transform that into like something, I was like, wow, mind blown.
Maybe he's a detailer. Maybe
Maybe the
maybe
architect,
yeah,
somewhere, man, because
exactly.
he definitely had the skills. But man, I mean, of course, like I was saying earlier, I mean, man, when it comes to films, I mean, commercials, some of the movies, of course, that stand out for me are Scooby Doo, 2, which is the
Hmm.
Monsters Unleashed, and of course, 13's Ghosts. That's everybody's. I gotta ask you. I mean, is that one of the films that kind of like when you talk to people? I mean, when you introduce yourself, you're kind of like, oh, you seen 13's Ghosts? Is
Yeah,
that a
it's funny when people ask me what I do for a living, or when I talk to people, I try to explain to them things I've been in. There seems to be like two camps of people, moviegoers, fans. There's the family oriented stuff that I've done, like Are We There Yet with Ice Cube, or the Air Bud movies, or Space Buddies, or the Muppets, and all those kind of Scooby Doo. And then there's the people who are into the 13 Ghosts and the Trick or Treat and the Dreamcatcher and all the horror films I've done. And yeah, 13 Ghosts, I would say, of the horror films, I would say 13 Ghosts has gotten the most attention. I mean, people send me photos of my face on their tattoos, on their leg, on their arm, and stuff, all the ghosts from 13 Ghosts. And that's always trippy for me because uh, all the ghosts if you think about it, all the ghosts in the movie have like really extreme makeup.
Yeah.
And me, for the most part, it's just me.
Yeah.
I have puke on my face, and I
Yeah.
have my hair is shaved down. So and then they shaved all my hair, left a tuft of hair in the front, and then they dyed it blonde, so I'd look like the baby Huey, big baby duck. And other than I have a little piece of makeup over top of my eyebrows to cover my eyebrows because they wanted to shave them off. And I've been in this business long enough to know you ain't touching these things because there's no guarantee they're going to grow back the same way. So they covered that. But beyond that, everything else is me. So when I see some guy, it's mostly guys. When I see some guy with my head on his leg or his arm or something, it's always a little trippy to me because I don't see the character. I just see me. But yeah, 13 Ghosts is by far the one I get the most fan mail for, the one I get the most requests for signed prints and what have you. And then on the other side, on the flip side, it would have to be Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed playing Minor 49er. It's amazing also, both of those films seem to have gotten more popular in the years since. Yeah. And I think because you had fans of the movies then, and now you've got like two generations of people showing their kids their favorite movies. And Scooby-Doo has been around since the 60s, and it just keeps getting new fans. And they keep finding the old stuff. And the thing with streaming, there is no such thing as old and new. It's either you've seen it or you haven't seen it. And it's new to you whenever you've seen something. So
and that's one of the things too, because a lot of times, I mean, I'll see a photo of an actor and they're like, oh, so-and-so age 78. And I'm like, what? Like, I'm like, man, what, I still remember him in such movies. And it's like when you see them, as far as now, I'm like, wow, man. Like, I mean, we don't see ourselves getting older, or you know what I mean? It's just it's one of those like reality checks. But you're right. I mean,
in the last year, I've gotten a lot of emails, a lot of messages from fans asking about the possible 13 Ghosts TV series that they keep hearing about online, that they're working on a series based on the backstories of all the 13 ghosts.
Yes,
And I keep telling them that, yes, I've seen the same stories as you, but I know nothing. I won't believe it until I see it, because this has been talked about for 20 years. And then I keep getting questions like, are you going to be playing the great child again? And like you were saying about people forgetting that people getting older, it's like, first of all, I'm 200 and something pounds lighter than I was when I played the great child. So unless you want to play, the empty parachute version of the great child, I look like a melted candle version of the great child now. But I mean, I'm still a big guy, but I'm also, 20 whatever years old, 25 years older. So, but most people think I look exactly the same. So who's to say? But I'd love to be involved with something like that. But they'll probably get new characters. Which then at that point, why not just make a whole new movie? If you're not gonna make the series on the ghosts from the movie that everybody's obsessed with, then what's the point? Just make an original story.
No, that's true. You see, and that's what happens a lot in Hollywood too. They keep remaking the same movies over and over, and I'm like, man, just come up with something. Name it something else, and let's go with somebody else. But that's true. But and that's one of the questions I wanted to ask as well, because I'm one of the guys that keeps posting that on Instagram and Facebook, and I'm like, man, like when are these backstories going to come out? My question to you though is, because there's been actors out there that have actually released books on backstories on the characters that they portrayed, because a lot of them don't have backstories. So with that being said, would that be something that you'd be able to do?
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because they never really had a clear idea of what the characters were. Because if you watch 13 Ghosts and you listen to the commentary, and you listen to Steve Beck, the director, and the production designer and the writers, on the commentary on the DVD, they give you one set of backstories for the ghosts. And then if you watch the extras and you see the ghost files with F. Murray Abraham, the narrator, telling you what happened to the individual ghosts, it's a whole other backstory. So it's like from when we were shooting the film till when they put out everything has changed. And to the point that I think I've had 4 or 5 backs, because I've got a stack of scripts in storage. I've got so many versions of this film, because they must have rewrote it probably 5 or 6 times. I got versions of the film written by James Gunn that never got released, because they brought him in as a script doctor kind of thing. So I have probably 5 or 6 versions of the script written by different people. And so when I first got involved, when I auditioned for 13 Ghosts, originally it was a character that was called Couch Potato. And it was just a big guy who basically died on his couch watching TV. And the picture I remember was me sitting on a couch. I had like a white singlet t-shirt on, and there's the shirt's moving and everything, because there's rats that are going in and out of my body and coming out of my eye socket and stuff like this. And then they changed it to where I was into BDSM. I was into bondage, and the woman who eventually plays my mother was supposed to play like a dominatrix, and she's hanging off the side of my body, and she's strapped to me, and I basically fell on her, and that's how she died. And which is interesting, they released a set of, let me see, I think I have one here. They released a set of postcards, and back when we did the film, and they created the Zodiac. And here's the interesting thing: when you see the picture, let's see, back then, pull it back.
There you go.
It's almost like they designed the images based on the version of the script that existed at the time. And so it almost looks like these designs were based on the version of the script where it was still about she was a dominatrix and I was one of her customers, kind of thing. Because when you see the movie now, it has nothing to do with what you see in this image.
Yeah.
So, and that's on the back. It shows you my character name. And where are we here? The Great Child. And so these were promotional cards that they gave us, all the different ghosts.
Oh, man.
And so I got a stack of those from every character. But yeah, so because so much stuff happens, they have to design all this stuff in pre-production.
Yeah.
So they design it based on the version of the script that they have, and then and you see the movie and there's me with my axe and there's my mom and I'm in my underwear and I got a bib. Well, that picture that I just showed you has nothing to do with that. That looks more like the version of the script I told you about where I'm into bondage and she's my dominatrix. So there's so many backstories. So yeah, if I was to write a book, it would have to be explaining every back version that existed of this, every story that existed of this character. And then, looking at other films that I've done, lots of times they don't give you any backstory. You basically just show up and you either create one in your own head that you use to play the character, your little secrets that you keep to yourself that nobody knows why you're saying things a certain way or doing things a certain way. I just did a film where I was, because of all the horror films I've done, I get like horror film directors and stuff who want me to do a cameo in their film, because it's cool to have somebody who's been in films that they like to be in their film. And so I had a small cameo role of a guy who's says, "Can I get a ride with you? I don't have a ride." Yeah, sure. Just very simple. He just wants to get a ride with the truck driver. I play the truck driver. But the way I played it was, I'm out cruising for my next guy to kill or rape, whatever, you don't know. So it's played in the script as just a happy, friendly guy. But I got my own secrets in my head. And
You see, and I was going to ask you too, because when it comes to projects, you had just finished one recently, which was a music video.
Yeah, I just did the music video for Melody Whore. And once again, the director, I had worked with her and she says, "You want to come out? I need this crazy whack job, over the top kind of character." And I couldn't think of anyone else to play that. It'd come out for a few hours, have some fun. And it's making the rounds right now. I did another music video earlier in the year, but that one hasn't been released yet. And I played it's like a Dr. of Island Moreau kind of storyline. And I play a guy who's half human, half pig, and, typecasting, of course. We need a pig man. Who do we get? I know. Let's get Ernst. But yeah, it's been slow because for me at least, ever since the COVID and the lockdown, and then we had the 2 different strikes in the union. It's been slow. And plus, since COVID, all the auditions have switched over to self-tapes. Everybody has to do their own taping now. Yeah. And half of the job was going into the audition room and making an impression with my size, walking into the room, them seeing me, and all of that is lost now. Now I'm just a head in a box, there's just another head on a video screen. So I've had a hard time getting booked since we changed to self-tapes. The last thing I did was the feature Crawl Space with Henry Thomas, which is on Paramount Plus. And, as a third lead in a Paramount feature. And I thought, boy, yes, this is exactly where I want to be. I'm on the poster, on everything, and then nothing.
Man, but you see, and I was gonna say too, because being in Canada, of course, when it comes to coming to the U.S., what's the process on that? Is it just a passport, a work visa? What do you guys need?
Yeah, well, when I've worked in the States in the past, I had to get a work visa. You had to go through immigration, and you have to get a work visa. But before I had to get a work visa, I had to I had to I had to put together a whole package. I had to show that I was a legitimate actor and that I wasn't coming to the States to take work away from an American, but that I was being brought down because of who I am and what I've done with
Right.
my career. So I had to get letters of references from different
Wow.
directors. I had to basically prove that I'm a real actor so that I could come and work in America. And uh, things have things have changed. Now it's not as easy to come down. That's why I haven't done any American conventions in the last little while. So uh, thankfully for me, most of the work has come up to Canada. You know, most of the stuff, Vancouver is now like the second or third largest shooting center in North America. So
Nice.
it's like half the movies people know of and half the TV shows people know of
Being
are
filmed out
are,
there.
are shot in Vancouver, especially. So yeah, so 13 Ghosts was shot here. Scooby Doo 2, Monsters Unleashed was shot here. I did the film Capote, which wasn't a horror film. It's a Academy Award winning film with Philip Seymour Hoffman, but even that was shot in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada.
Right.
So I didn't have to go down to the States. I just had to fly to another part of Canada. But because so much American stuff gets shot up here, I'm what they call a local hire.
Yeah.
And then if you have a resume to back you up, well, then you even have a better chance of getting hired, because not only are you local, they're like, hell, we'd hire him if we were in the States. But now that he's in Canada, it's even easier for us to hire him.
Oh yeah, I
So
mean, because I'm pretty sure when it comes to production and filming, I mean, they got to pay. I mean, not just you going to film, but I mean, as far as room and stay, all that comes in the package.
yeah, like when I've shot in the States before, you get flown down there, you get flown back, you get the per diem every day, you get some spending money, you get the hotel room, you get the driver picking you up and what have you. And then you come back home and you shoot a film, and next thing you know, you got to take a cab to work, and you got
Adds up.
next thing you know, I'm always half expecting them to say, "Don't forget to bring your brown bag lunch." But
Man,
thankfully,
I
we
mean,
have nice catering on film sets, so that's the
man, and of course, I mean, when it comes to acting, I mean, what was it that you kept doing? I mean, I asked you earlier, and you said as far as you didn't take it to a professional level. To I believe you said 19, but did you pursue classes? Did you pursue
in high
school?
school. Uh, like so from when I did that first play where I was Santa Claus in kindergarten up until when I graduated, I did school plays, assemblies. I would do skits. I took a drama class in high school. I did a school play, The Miracle Worker. Uh, a friend of mine who I was in the drama club with at our high school, we created a bit of an improv group, and we would go to old age homes and retirement homes,
Nice.
and we would perform for the seniors who are shut in, who can't get out. Nobody
Yeah.
comes to visit them. So we would come in and put on silly little plays and little silly little skits. Half the time they didn't know, they didn't get the references. They
Yeah.
didn't understand. So you start realizing it's just about making funny faces and funny noises and just something to make them laugh and forget about their problems for an hour or what have you.
Um,
So, and I found out early on that was a good way to get out of class early. It's like, oh, we got to go perform at the old age home.
I gotta
Sorry,
go. Gotta go.
I wish I could take that math test, but I got to
Man,
go
you know what? I
perform.
mean, the whole improv, especially at those retirement homes, even now, because myself, like I'm a contract delivery driver. I mean, I
Yeah,
do
yeah,
that on the side, but it's like I've delivered to a lot of the assisted living homes, just with dropping off furniture, and then a lot of them. I mean, man, it's just like a simple hi goes a long way, man. Like
yeah,
I don't see people for days, for weeks. But
yeah.
I mean, like when I go to those places, especially now, like I make it an effort to say hi to everybody. Or I'll be walking by the rooms and knocking, like, "Hey, how's it going?" And they're like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" And
Yeah, because
you
there a
know,
lot of them they just get put
uh,
there and forgotten about.
yeah, unfortunately, man. But that's great. I think at one point, I think it was just like one of those things they posted on social media, but they were saying about having like kids go and visit like these homes, you know. And I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, why not? You know, it's like you take them everywhere else, you know. Why not just to do a little play or do something
Exactly.
for
Plus,
the
it's it looks good on your college application or
yeah.
whatever for volunteer work
Oh
and
yeah,
stuff. It makes you look like a good human being when you do that kind of stuff. And so yeah, that was basically it as far as training and as far as anything. I basically just wrote my own stuff, did my own plays and stuff. And then when I moved out to Vancouver and I started getting high, that see classes never came into it because I started getting hired on things,
yeah.
and then I get hired on the next thing and the next thing and the
You
next
were
thing.
like on
And
the job
so
training, huh?
on the job training. And it wasn't until I'd already been doing this for 20 something years that I started questioning myself because enough people would be saying things like, aren't you in class? You should be in class. Aren't you in class? You should be taking a class. Who's your teacher? And you start questioning. It's like, are they telling me I should be taking classes because I suck? You start questioning everything that you've learned over the last 20 years because enough people have mentioned class. So then I started taking class, and then I would get in fights with the teachers. I would argue with them because they want me to do it their way where I've learned to do it my way. And then I realized that no, class, one thing that class is good for is if you have no clue at
Yeah,
all and you just want to learn something and you want to get some instruction, you want someone to point you in the right direction, what have you. It's also class is a good thing for just like athletes train. You
yeah,
know, the Olympics might be once every 4 years, but they're still practicing and training every day. That's what class is good for. But if you're a working actor, you're already on set, so stretching that muscle isn't as necessary because you're already doing it.
right.
But it's not a bad thing to get into class if you have no training, but if you have set experience, you're going to learn a lot more in the doing. I'll tell you, having a teacher in a class sitting there staring at you versus 200 crew and a $500,000 camera pointed at you and all these lights and everything, you better learn fast what you're doing because there's a lot more pressure, you know.
No, yeah. I mean, because even I mean, like a lot of the small indie films here, you know, I've got a few coming up this year for myself, and I'm like, man, what do I wear? And they're like, man, just wear whatever, you know. So I'm like, okay, you know, like so, like yourself, like I'm already creating characters in my head and
Yeah.
getting ready to just go out there and I don't. One of the things I told myself was that I'm never gonna wear something that I would wear every day because I don't want people to be like, hey, isn't that the shirt you wore that day? You know. So I'm definitely looking for props as far as the costume, I guess, you know,
Well,
but
that's the fun part is when they say, come as your character, and that's all they say. Then it's like, well, thank you. You've now let me create
yeah, there you go.
what I'm going to look like, how I'm going to act.
Yeah.
I've had that opportunity a few times where the directors have just allowed me to have fun with something.
Right.
Like I did a movie called Smokin' Aces 2,
Yeah.
and I played Baby Boy Tremor. I was one of the Tremor brothers in the sequel to Smokin' Aces, and that was executive produced by Joe Carnahan, who directed the first Smokin' Aces. And so after I had done Smokin' Aces 2, my agent got a call from Joe Carnahan saying that he wanted to give me a straight offer to be in the A team. And he liked my work on Smokin' Aces 2 so much that he just wanted to book me. The character was very vague. There was barely anything written in the script. So I was basically told we were going to come in and just play and create the thing. So I had a chance to basically create a look. So, I trimmed my mustache. So I had a little pencil thin mustache. I got myself these big serial killer looking glasses from the 80s. And I made sure that they had the little, like the librarians, the little string on the side that went around the neck. And I cut my hair so that it was all sticking up in the front. So it was like a Kramer from Seinfeld kind of hair. And the director had me wearing a Meatloaf Bat Out of Hell t-shirt. And so I got to basically have fun creating this character. So that's always fun when and then it's like you're told you get to create this character, come in, we're going to make up the lines, we're going to improv, we're going to do a bunch of stuff on set. And then, oh yeah, you're going to be doing this one scene with Liam Neeson, and you're going to be doing this other scene with Jessica Biel. So it's fun for me. It's like the movie's called The A-Team, but when I'm on screen, it's just me.
Yeah. My team.
It's my team.
Man, you see, well, let me ask you this, because of course, I mean, obviously you have the experience when it comes to creating characters, to portraying, but what about writing? I mean, have you thought about, because I asked you earlier about writing the background for that 13 Scope, but I mean,
that's something that my wife is always on me about, and I have lots to say.
Yeah.
I just have never had the, I don't know, not the willpower, but the staying power to stay with it. I've written the first few pages of a lot of scripts. I've written the first few pages of a lot of novels. I've written the first few pages of, and then it just, life gets on, and other things come up, and then it just moves to, I've never stuck. The only time I've ever stuck with it, in 2013, I did a one-man show at the Vancouver Fringe Festival, and it was about my life, and it was about what Meatloaf, the singer, meant to my life. He's shown up 3 different times in my life. So I wrote a play about that and how my wife came into my life, and how, so it was called The Rock Star and Me. And that was my first real, I did a cable access sitcom back in the early 90s. I helped write an episode of that. I wrote this stage play that I did, but no, I don't know. I think a lot of it is the fear of success. It's the I'm afraid to try something, because it's easier to not do it and say, well, I could have done that. Yeah. It would have been good if I had done it, rather than try and fail, because there's nothing worse than putting all the effort into something and then it fails. But if you don't do it, then you can say, well, it would have been really good if I had done it. I just didn't do it.
You mentioned the Kramer hair earlier. I think that was a Kramer line from Seinfeld, where he's like, I could have done it, but I didn't.
Yeah,
a bed or something like that. But you're right, though, man. I mean, there's fear in a lot of stuff, man. One of the things I was gonna say too was even when it comes to social media or creating a blog, to where you can just write and just continually keep adding on, and that way at least it doesn't get lost. It stays there, and if, one day you're like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna sit down and finish these stories. So many indie films out there, and I'm grateful because a lot of them, but like I've interviewed, and a lot, the storylines are freaking great, and I'm like, man, like I would have never thought of that, but that's cool. I like that the way they set up the storyline, the mashup. I'm a big low budget, movie fanatic when it comes to like creating like the wackiest, funniest thing you can come up with, horror wise, right? But yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, even if the stories, you could sell them, or you can have other people, finish them or take over, but I mean, that would be cool for you to be able to establish that and just have
the other thing that my wife keeps reminding me of is I have so many set stories. I have so many stories of being in this business and the stuff that happens while you're on set, and all the people you've worked with and the parties you've been to and all the things that and the reason she keeps telling me, she says, you should write these down, because with every year you forget a little more.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you leave things out that you forgot about, and the stories aren't as funny as they used to be, because you're telling it differently and all those kind of things. So just for my own sake, I should probably write that stuff down, just to make every time I do a podcast, every time I do an interview, it's like, oh, I should have said this, and I should have told them about that story. And because I constantly am forgetting more than I remember. And, after 35 years, there's a lot of stories in there, and what I've learned after a long time of being in this business is most of the stuff that sticks is not stuff that happened on set. It's not stuff that happens in the movies. It's the stuff between takes.
Yeah.
It's the stuff when you're sitting down at your director's chair. It's when you're at the craft service table. It's when you're in your trailer. It's all the other stuff that you remember. That's why it's so hard to watch a movie that I'm in, because when you're watching it, you're not remembering what's happening in the scene. You're like, oh yeah, that was the day that so and so was sick, and oh, that was the day that the guy brought the thing, and remember the dog puked on the thing and all that. It's like you don't remember the story, you remember the stuff that happened around it.
Well, let me ask you this: filming 13th Ghost, is there something that stands out more than anything for you? I mean, that was funny. Maybe somebody said something or made something.
Well, the first thing that stands out is we did a bunch of makeup tests because, like I told you, they didn't really have a clear idea of what they wanted the monsters, first of all, to be, and then the ghosts to be, and then secondly, what they were going to look like. So we had a bunch of makeup tests where we'd come in and they try different looks on us and everything. And it's a little thinner now, but I used to have a pretty good afro. And so I had that kind of hair, and I'm standing next to the trailers talking to Steve Beck, the director, and we're trying to decide what to do with my hair. And just then Shannon Elizabeth, who's in the film, walks by, and I think she's off to the makeup trailer, and he stops her and he says, "Shannon, the big baby, what kind of hair do you think he should have?" And she looks at me and she goes, "Oh, you remember that character? I mentioned him earlier. You remember that character, Baby Huey? He was like a duck. He was a cartoon duck, and he had diapers, and he had like a tuft of hair in the front and everything." She goes, "That would be a perfect look for him." And Steve goes, I love that." Next thing you know, I'm off to the makeup trailer. That's when they shaved off my whole afro. They left a little tuft of hair. Well, I should say there used to be a tuft of hair here. Yeah. Maybe that's why it doesn't grow anymore, because they left that. They dyed the whole thing bleach blonde. And then for the next 3 months, every 3 days, I had to go back in to get my roots touched up, bleached. And so for 3 months, I walked around looking like a poodle's ass, with this tuft of hair in the front. And it's funny because at the beginning of production, I'd always wear a baseball cap when I wasn't on set. I'd wear baseball caps to cover my hair. By the end of the 3 months, I had little barrettes in there. I had little things tied, little ribbons. It's like I had fun with it. So I remember that clearly. I also remember that house that we shot in. First of all, the house was real. What people don't realize is what you see existed. It was a 2-story. It was in a studio. It was in a big special effects soundstage, but it was there. The glass and the gears, the windows went up and down and sideways. The whole thing was working, and it was hot as hell because everything was made out of glass. Yeah, and glass reflects. And how are you going to put a camera crew in front of a bunch of actors and every wall is made out of glass and not see the camera crew? So they had to almost overlight it to create, so that they had to almost had to put a big glare and everything to like block out the crew. And it's funny, everybody was told to wear black and crouch in the corners and everything when we were shooting. But it's like a drinking game. If when you watch the film, it's like every time you see a crew member crouching in the corner, take a drink, because every so often there's the crew member who forgot to wear his black shirt that day. So all of a sudden you see like a grip in the corner with his white t-shirt on or something. So for me, that's always the fun of watching it. But remembering how hot it was in there, because in the studios, they have to turn the fans off because the fans make noise. Yes. So, and then they had like almost double the lights in there. And that was when I was thankful that I had barely any makeup, because like the Hammer and the Juggernaut and the Jackal, they all had on hours and hours and hours of prosthetic makeup. So they had to have all that when they were in there. Whereas me and the Angry Princess, we were basically naked standing there. So
you're like, I'm good.
And I remember like when all the ghosts were on set, and like for example, when we're all standing at the Black Zodiac there, when we're all standing on the ring and we're spinning around and all the gears are going, whenever all the ghosts were on set, the little boy, the one that has the arrow in his head, he had to be replaced by a woman who was his double because he couldn't be on set when the Angry Princess was on set because
Oh,
she's
that's
a
right.
fully, completely naked
Yeah.
woman. And he was like a 10-year-old boy. So whenever you see us all on set, it's actually a little stunt woman named Susie who's dressed up as the boy.
Oh man. Okay.
And then whenever you see the close-ups, then it's the boy. But whenever you see us all on the ring together, and there's a few behind the scenes shots that have made the rounds on the internet where it almost looks like a class photo. We're outside and we're all standing next to each other, all the ghosts, and there's like a white tent behind us or something. In that photo, the little boy is not the little boy. It's his double in that photo. So the amount of people who have pointed out all the ghosts in that have not clued into the fact that
Oh man, now I got to see that because
that's not
that's
actually
one
the
of
little
things I
boy.
would never know.
And then there's another photo, the same one, but this one has all the one that has all the makeup artists and the costume designers and the ghosts. That one is the stunt double. But then the one that is just the ghosts, that one has the little boy in it, and you can tell the difference when you see them next to each other. So it's always fun, those little behind the scenes things that nobody knows about.
You see, and I was gonna watch the film yesterday, and I actually saved it for tonight, so I'm gonna watch that. I'm gonna be looking out for those little perks for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And when the scene where we pick up F. Murray Abraham at the end of the film, when it's discovered that he didn't die and that he's been faking it with his neck, we pick him up and we throw him into the eye. When we shot that, he was basically, there's like a scoop, like a big spoon, and the spoon is green, and he's laying in the spoon, and so we're all picking up this big green arm that he's laying in, and we're just basically looking at. So we're not really picking him up, we're not really carrying him. He's basically being moved by this crane on a green screen, and then they just erased all of that. But
Nice.
the thing that I remember the most about when we're spinning around on that thing and you have all the gears turning in front of us, well, in real life there were no gears. That was all CGI. That was all added later. So what you had in real life was a bunch of people in makeup on this ring that is spinning. So we're all standing there as this thing is moving, and it was moving a pretty good clip because, it's like if you didn't focus on what you were doing, you could lose your balance, especially when in the hole where the gears were, in reality, you had a bunch of big lights pointed up at us. You had a bunch of big fans blowing air at us.
Wow.
And that's about maybe a 15-foot, 10-foot deep hole. So as you're spinning around in circles, the only thing you're thinking of is, if I fall, I'm landing on those fans and those lights.
Ooh.
And so I said to the stunt coordinator, Ken Kersinger, who interestingly enough is who played Jason in Freddy versus Jason.
Yeah.
On 13 Ghosts, he was the stunt coordinator. And I said to him, if I feel like I'm going to fall, what do I do? And he says, fall back.
Done. Professional, man.
Thanks for the advice there, Mr. Stunt Coordinator.
Man.
And yeah, I ended up losing my what do you call it? Like I almost had like heat stroke in there because it was so hot, and I didn't have enough. They had potassium. They feed me. They brought a doctor in. They fed me bananas and Gatorade and stuff because it was just so hot and I was just sweating so much. And they keep putting more and more makeup on, and the different levels of makeup that I had like 3 layers of body makeup, and it was so thick that it was like clogging my pores. So I wasn't like sweating properly, and it was intense. And the thing with these films is, everything you shoot, you could be there all day, and in reality, it's maybe 3 seconds of screen time because it's all the special effects and everything involved with that. So these long days, and you're there already for 3-4 hours longer than everyone else because you got to get into makeup and everything before the day starts. And many days they'd have all 12 ghosts sitting there fully made up with all of our makeup people. We'd be sitting there for 12 hours, nothing. And then they'd come over and they go, I'm sorry, guys. We're not going to get to you guys today. And we're like,
Wow.
all this work,
Wow.
12 ghosts fully ready to go, and all the people that did all that work. And now we have to go back to the trailers and have to take it all off and go home and come back tomorrow and start over again.
Wow. Yeah.
So
that's definitely dreadful, man.
and that's where your agent says, well, you're getting paid.
Right. Yeah. But you have to
But
go through all that filter, man.
You know, the people who do the makeup and the people who do the costumes, they're artists.
Yeah.
These artists deserve to have their work shown. They don't deserve to have their work just ripped off at the end of the day and start over the next day.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're all getting paid, but people should have the respect of, knowing that, a lot of work went into this.
Definitely, man. But
So
my
yeah,
man,
13 Ghosts. I was just going to say 13 Ghosts has been a big one for me, and it was a lot of fun. I knew, how do I say this? When we shot the film, I thought for sure this deserves the production design deserved an Oscar. I mean, especially for a horror film. First of all, films don't go into it that. The design of that house and the carvings in the glass and all of the props that were in that the house was amazing.
It was a masterpiece.
It was a masterpiece, but because it was a horror film, those films never get the respect they deserve on the technical end, and that was too bad. But and then because it came out a few weeks after 9/11, it never had the big blockbuster at the box office that it should have, because people weren't even really going to the film when it came out. It didn't really hit until it came out on video and people could watch it at home. And just mentioning, because I mentioned 9/11, the last shot of the film had been shot for months, done, ready to go, and then like 3.5 weeks, I think, before the film opened, we get a call. They want you to come in to do some reshoots. So we go in to do some reshoots. There's this, for example, at the end of the film, when the house explodes and all the ghosts have been released, set free, and you see us all walking off into the woods and the jackal is dancing and everything, and we're basically walking off into the woods. That didn't exist in what we originally shot. So that was part of the reshoots. They wanted us to come back and have the shot where they could shoot us walking away from the home.
Oh, man.
The day that we shot that was 9/11.
Oh, wow.
So I get called in the morning to come to set. I go to set, and all of a sudden I find out the whole world's going to hell. I don't know what the hell's happening.
Yeah.
Half the crew that's up here for the day, it's from the States. So now they don't even know if they're going to get to go back to the States because all the flights have been shut down. And just think of how surreal this was. We're all dressed up as these ghosts. We're shooting scenes where the jackal is attacking. The scene where Shannon Elizabeth is getting her shirt ripped and the jackal is, all those little insert shots.
Yeah.
I think they decided they wanted more nudity of Shannon Elizabeth, so that they had to have a shot of him ripping her shirt and you see her breast, but it wasn't Shannon Elizabeth. It was a photo double. So don't get all too excited, people. Because, there's not enough nudity in this film where this naked woman is walking around for the whole movie. Yeah. So those kind of things, we're doing those, and then they'd yell cut, and then we'd all run back over and stand around this little TV monitor watching the insanity that's happening in New York. And then they go, okay, back to set. And we go back and play like the ghost and everything. And it was so surreal because nothing that we were doing on set seemed like it should matter. It's like, the shit's going down. Yeah, man. What are we doing here, playing around in my underwear? But so whenever I see the film will always remind me of 9/11, because knowing that happened while we were shooting it, and then knowing that the film only came out like a few weeks after that. Yeah. And I've mentioned this in other interviews. I think the film became more successful the smaller the screen. Like when it was in the theater, the editing is so fast in the film, it has like that MTV music video style cut editing that when it was in the screen, I remember at the premiere, it was almost headache inducing because it was so loud and the editing was so fast that on the massive big movie screen, you could almost not even take in everything that was happening because you're looking on this side of the screen. And by the time you go to look over here, they've already cut to something else. And so now you're trying to, like, you never had enough. But when you watched it at home on your TV screen,
watch the whole thing.
You could watch the whole thing and the movie played better and you didn't notice the editing as much. So I think that's another reason why that's almost like a subtle, like a thing that you don't notice it. It's happening in front of you. You know, it's subliminal. It's like the editing plays much better on it. And now that people are watching on their phones,
oh yeah, man,
film must be amazing.
I know, yeah, you see, and that's one of the things too, because there's films that I've seen and I'm like, man, this would be great for to watch at home, you know, and I say that for the same reason, because it's just like, so it's too much to take in, and it's like there's a lot of things that you do miss out on. So when you watch it at home, you're like, man, I never noticed that, or I didn't see that ghost or the monster on that.
And just like the opposite is true, there are some films you're like, God, I wish I had seen this in the theater.
Yes, exactly, man. But man, well, that's interesting, bro. Because I mean, like many, you know, you can always ask like where you were when 9/11 happened. I mean, for myself, I was a letter carrier. I was a mailman here. I was delivering to one of my customers. He opens the door and this face of chalk and this, you know, the look of chalk in his face, and I'm like, man, how's it going? And he's like, man, did you not hear what happened? And I'm like, no, what happened? Opens the door on big old TV, man. You see the second plane hit, bro, and I was like, what movie is that? And he was like, it's not a movie. And I'm like, what? Like, I had to, this was before cell phone. So I had to go to the payphone. I had to call my work and be like, hey, should I be out here? Like, what's going on? And he's like, yeah, just keep going, you know, and call back like in an hour. And I'm just like walking around and delivering mail, like wondering like what the world's going on, man? Because I mean, you know, we didn't have cell phones then. We couldn't just look and be like, oh man, this is going on. I mean, it was just, you know, surreal. I mean, it's unfortunate that it happened, you know, so many lives got lost. And but yeah, you know, so I'm always gonna remember that. Now I'm gonna remember that part of the movie. So yeah, of course I've got something to talk about. But my man, I do appreciate you for jumping on here. I would love to bring you back on here, man.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, definitely. I know there's more stories and there's more things we can talk about. Is there any projects that you can tell us before we let you go, as far as you're working on or coming up?
Like I said, I helped out some friends. They had me do a cameo in a film called Riding Shotgun. It's just it feels like one of those old time grindhouse films. It's like it's a noir. It's a crazy over the top action, lots of blood, lots of nudity, you know, just your old time fashion grindhouse film. But it also has an LGBT feel to it. There's a bunch of trans people in the film, trans people who worked on the film. So it's like an all inclusive, let's just tell a story kind of thing. And I'm really looking forward to that. But at this time, I'm just, if anybody's interested, like I said, I can't get out to all the conventions, so I've decided to bring people to me. So if you want to get some signed photos, I've got prints on my page, on my Facebook page. Just check me out, see Ernst Harth, for 13 Goes, for Trick or Treat, for all the different films I've been, Scooby-Doo 2. I've got 8x10s that I'm signing, and I'm also now taking in mail-ins. So if anyone's got 13 Goes posters and what have you, they can send them in. The address and everything is on the top of my Facebook page. So yeah, really, I'm just happy to get the word out, and hopefully some more work will come rolling in. And like I said, the last thing I did was Crawl Space. So if anybody wants to see a fun film with me, Crawl Space on Paramount Plus with Henry Thomas. You get to see me beat up Elliot from E.T.
Now that I gotta watch, man. So definitely. But man, I do appreciate you. Don't hang up yet. Everybody out there, of course, once again, see Ernst Harth. It's a Spider Coming Soon podcast. So next time, follow up.